So I'll go ahead and just introduce myself first. I'm Josen Diaz. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Ethnic Studies right now. I am also really lucky to be the element chair of the collaborative research program here at the Humanities Center. And one of the really cool things I get to do is actually to meet and to work with the Keck Fellows for the year. And so, as you all know, or many of you maybe don't know, the Keck Fellowship Program is this really fantastic program that allows undergraduate researchers to work for a whole year with their advisors in the interdisciplinary humanities. And so all of our Keck Fellows have been working on these really fantastic projects that I'm really excited for them to share with you all. And to also just share a little bit more about the program, their experiences within the program, and hopefully get all of you all interested in applying for the program or having students apply for programs as well. So what we'll go ahead and do is have each of them introduce themselves first, say a little bit more about who their advisors are, their names, and then just a little bit about their research projects as well. Okay, do you want to go first?
Okay. Hello. I'm Jeremie. I'm a senior. I'm majoring in architecture and minor in art history. And the topic of my research is Haitian migrants and their housing strategies in San Diego County. Did you talk about your advisor? Oh, my advisor is Dr. Juliana. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Riley Lim. I'm a double major in French and Communication. My advisor is Dr. Sylvie Anguilla, and I'm working on a literary project looking at Ying Chen, who's a Shanghainese woman who moved to Quebec later on to write in French, and she positions in a really interesting way because she doesn't like to be seen as a Chinese writer specifically, and I'm kind of looking at how that is in relation with Edouard Glissant's work, who's a Caribbean philosopher, and how he's able to give a lot of insight into our stylistic progression. It's been a really fun project so far.
Hi, I'm Ciara. I'm an art history major, and I have minors in philosophy and visual arts. My advisor is Dr. Sally Yard, and my project is on the abstract expressionist artist Lee Krasner and how her life and career align with the second wave feminist movement.
I'm Juliana. My major is art history and international relations, and my advisor is Dr. Catherine Sattler, and my topic is titled Choreographed into Vogue, Female Gymnasts in American Pop Culture and Cold War Diplomacy.
My name is Camille. I'm English major, psych minor. My project is titled Abortion and the Metaphorical Imagination, and so I'm essentially just looking at the narratives in the abortion cases over the past few years, what it says about how we view women, how we view their inherent lack of dignity in these cases, and how like the narratives that we currently have in place really set us up for failure in trying to achieve any form of progress. And my advisor is Dr. Carlton Floyd.
Hi, my name is Abigail Hinrichs. I'm a senior English major here at USD. My project title is Undesired Service Requires No Hire. I'm looking at a poetry manuscript that's circled among the women of Anne Boleyn's court, and I'm analyzing their copies of poetry and their original poetry, both of which are in the manuscript, and talking about what it means to have agency in such a misogynistic court. And my main advisor is Dr. Maura Giles Watson.
Awesome. Well, welcome. These are really exciting projects. Obviously, we want to hear a bit more. You all can hear me, right? A little bit more from each of you. And so I have a series of questions that I think will be helpful to hear more about the projects, more about the fellowship program, and anyone can go ahead and answer first. So the first question I have is, how did you come up with your project idea, and how did you know the Keck Humanities Fellowship was right for you?
I was introduced to the manuscript. Come sit. I was introduced to the manuscript in a class I took the fall of my sophomore year. And I did like a little tiny essay on it. And then I was thinking about like just later that summer, like what else can I do with this? And then I had a couple friends who were senior English majors at the time, and they were like, you should turn this into a Keck project. So I kind of had the in because I knew people who did the Keck, and they were like, hey, you should do that. Like I didn't personally find out about it on my own. But yeah, that's how I think a lot of us found our ideas was like in a class, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, same kind of entryway. I took a class with Carlton Floyd on metaphor theory, and then part of the class was to essentially have a discussion with yourself about how metaphors play a role in like your daily life. And at the time, Roe v. Wade was like at the cusp of getting overturned. And so there was like a snippet in the essay that like really resonated with me. And I also knew people, who were doing Keck. One person did Keck, one person did Sure. And so I was like, I think I can do both. I think that's allowed. And then I ended up doing both. And so it was like a small project. And then I was like, I could just do this for the rest of the year. Like, honestly, there's so many like other things to research. It's just this rabbit hole. So it just kind of turned into like a pretty long project.
Mine also started like similarly. It was from like a class my sophomore year that was like historian's craft. So you write your own research paper, and I loved talking about gymnastics, and so I knew there was like a million ways I wanted to go with that. And Ciara and I were both part of the Humanities Center, so we like knew about it.
Yeah, similar answer. I found out through the student board at the Humanities Center. But as for my project, I knew immediately I wanted to do Lee Krasner just because I was really drawn to her art style. And then upon researching her more, I found out that she was married to Jackson Pollock, which I thought was really interesting. And from there, I did more research and found out that her life really aligned with the timeline of the second wave feminist movement. So I was able to go down that path, and I really enjoy where I ended up.
We'll keep on moving this. I'm sorry. So my project started out as I was a Sure scholar 2 summers ago. Yes, past summer. That summer of my junior year. Sorry about that. And I was introduced by to the author Yingchen by my advisor, I've taken many classes with her, and I told her I was interested in going into French literature academia, and then she recommended that I would do Sure, and then eventually after I finished Sure, I actually came to the panel last year for Keck, and I just knew I had to apply in order to continue my research. So it's a nice it was a nice streamlined experience.
As for me, I started my research through McNair, as my advisor advised me about McNair. And after the end of the summer, I had a lot of unsolved questions, and I needed to find somewhere to actually get my questions solved. And then my advisor pointed me to Keck, and I've been here.
I mean, it sounds a bit like all of you had interest in a project, interest in working with a mentor, but an interest in a project that you got to explore through Keck a bit further, right? That there was something that sparked something, and then Keck became the place, or Sure, in combination with Sure and McNair, that allowed you to really delve into that. Thanks for sharing that. I think some of you have answered this already, but we're curious about how you all are thinking about the interdisciplinary humanities. What are the interdisciplinary humanities for you, and especially kind of talking through your projects to answer that question.
Well, for me, it's, I guess, looking at one topic through multiple perspectives, which I really found throughout the process of my project as well, because it is an art history paper, but I am also incorporating history and gender studies, which really allowed me to get more of an in-depth look at Lee Krasner, which I don't think I would have been able to have if I just looked at it through one lens. So I guess, just looking at one topic through multiple lenses in order to discover more about it and make those connections.
I can go next. I think pursuing a project in literature and is really exciting within itself, because even within literature, there are many different ways of approaching text, and it usually dips into like philosophy, and also like a historical perspective as well. And there are different types of theories, and I think going into literature, you're naturally, over time, you might think you have this one particular perspective, but the more you read, you just realize that so many other disciplines as well are really important. Kind of like you were saying earlier, Dr. Ingram, about how like if you're going through literature, you need to, you can't learn about literature without the philosophy, the history, and it just naturally blossoms from there. I would say even within like a singular discipline, there's not even one lens to look at things. Even in the discipline, even with art history, I'm sure there are many different debates of how you analyze aesthetics versus where you're locating meaning within the text, and I think it's the same way about literature too. I'm really curious about how that works with architecture and stuff.
I mean,
but, yeah.
thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pass the baton. It was just thinking. I'm sorry,
Thank you, brother, to me, because I wanted to follow up with the history you're talking about, because in architecture, it's all about like say it's like a pattern. Someone have done it before, and it's like throughout the history. And to my research, I had to learn the history of the migration of Haitian migrants to actually understand why is it still happening and has it just started now. And to the history, I had to understand and realize has been to the migration. We have like our great what's his name, Gisabo. He actually discovered, it was one of the founders of Chicago. So throughout that, I learned more history about the Haitian migrants by just seeing them and having an interest in them.
Apparently we're using this now. For me, because my manuscript, it is just poetry, and like you really can't get a feminist reading out of it by just looking at the words. I mean, like it's tutor English. So like I started just thinking like, oh, it was just going to be gender studies and literature. But then as I got more into the manuscript, and then I started including history, because I was like, okay, well, this manuscript was shaped by its context, which led me into thinking about Anne Boleyn and like the culture of court that she kind of had, which then led me into religion. So it all kind of like spirals, and it ended up just being like a combination of religion and history and gender studies and literature, and also like elements of social class. So I feel like, I don't know, I just couldn't really get a complete look at my manuscript and, really get something meaningful out of it without, interdisciplinary work. Yeah.
I completely agree with that. When I started my project, I thought it was going to be just metaphor theory, but when you talk about abortion, you can't separate that from the politics, from economy, from class, from so many different levels of analysis. Otherwise, it just cheapens like the argument. And so I found myself like needing to understand and look at things through multiple lenses to get a better picture. And then so like it ultimately became like metaphor theory plus like political science plus like a class lens, and yeah, and it just kind of culminated into a much larger piece. Like, yeah, so many lenses are required to look at abortion and women and things like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I think mine was kind of similar. I actually feel like I learned so much from like everyone here, and like when I started the project, particularly like I went with Ciara to SF MoMA over winter break, and that was so cool just to see you like in your element. But I never would have like considered looking at like post-war like culture or like second wave feminism in the way that like in the time period and like way you did, because I was very like focused on the 70s and 80s. But like then I found a magical article that I told you about that was about like post-war culture, and I was like, oh, this is great, like I can totally apply this like methodology. So I learned quite a lot from everyone here.
Fantastic. One of the threads that I hear you all saying too is the kind of, Riley described it as a natural, right, process where you realize there's certain kinds of limitations to how you've been thinking about something, and it necessitates you going to another place, right? And I think each of you described that in such rich terms. So yeah, appreciate that. So the other question is, how did your research evolve? And I think some of you have started talking about this. So we'd love to know the kinds of
pluses and minuses of what that looked like. But how did your process, your research evolve, and did anything unexpected come up in the research process for you?
Starting off my project, I feel like the paper, along with my view on what I was writing about, completely shifted. When I went into it, I was like, I'm pro-choice, it was very like, feel like when I went into it, it was very biased. It was like, this is like, I don't know how to critique something when I'm so deep in it. And my advisor really guided me along the process of looking at everything, being able to critique everything from a new lens. And so what started off as like um kind of just examining mostly pro-life became examining like everything as a whole, and realizing that there was a much more foundational issue at hand that just cascades into both directions. Forgot where I was going with that, but I'm gonna leave it at that. There you go.
For me, my original project wasn't even going to center on the manuscript. I just wanted to talk about Henry VIII's court and like his like famous six wives, and like think about like their deaths and like what it meant in terms of, you know, like violence against women. And then as I got into it, I realized I had gone way too broad. And so I just couldn't go deep enough, like, if that makes sense. And so, as like, I think like in October, I was like, okay, I'm just doing this, like just Anne Boleyn and just this manuscript, and I'm just going to go really deep with it and see how far I can take this, because like I wanted to go into like playwrights and like different movements of like art, and I was like, okay, I can't do all of that well in 1 year. That's a book. That's what my advisor kept saying, is that's a book, not a paper. So yeah, that was it for me.
And then mine, I feel like, was like took shape once I found like the primary sources that like really grounded it. I think for gymnastics and looking at soft power and popularity, it's like quite hard to measure or be like, oh, this is like the proof. And so when I went to like the Nixon archives last fall, that was like amazing to see that like they were talking about gymnastics and connecting it to foreign policy terms in a way that like I had thought, but like to have it explicitly written out there was really exciting. And then I went to the Reagan archives earlier this semester, and that also like reinforced like a through line between different presidential administrations and evolving gymnastics in the United States. No.
Yeah, maybe we do that. Pass them.
For mine, the biggest shift was switching from viewing Lee Krasner as a feminist artist to viewing her through a feminist lens, because she never said that she was a feminist artist, never claimed to be feminist at all. So that was a big shift for me. And I'm also, one of the essential texts that I'm using in my project is Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique. So that lined up with her lifetime, but there's not really any proof that she read it or connected with it. So that was, I guess, where I shifted my project, and my argument shifted too. Instead of arguing for her as a feminist artist, I now argue for her as a proto-feminist artist, which is, I guess, a slight change, but it really changed how I approached the entirety of my research. And also, like, in the end, I sort of concluded that everybody should be viewing all artists should be viewed through a feminist lens to get more of a full understanding of their work, even if they aren't a feminist artist. So yeah, that was the biggest shift in my work.
Yeah, I think especially starting off research, it can be really intimidating, and that was definitely my case, because when I applied, I actually thought I would talk about the author I'm working on right now in accordance with a manifest, a literary manifest that came out in 2007. And the more research I did into it, I just realized that it was like just not a like nuanced enough perspective. And I realized I was talking to my professor, and she was really funny. She'd always say like, Riley, you have to like retighten, you have to tighten up your argument. We spoke in French, like, resserrer, like ton argument, like, and she would always just say that, and you have to tighten it more. And I just felt like yeah, the manifest I was just reading on, it wasn't it just wasn't substantial enough. And that was really, it was really scary at first, but I'm so happy that happened. And I, came to that realization, because then I found Edouard Guisson, who's the, the philosopher I'm using to talk about her. And I just found so many more connections, and everything, again, it just blossoms from there. And it was out of the blue. I was just I was on JSTOR, and I would just put in like the most vague terms, like poetics and post-colonialism, poetics and race, and then I just I ran into this title, and the specific book I'm using by him, The Poetics of Relation. It really just kind of came out of nowhere. I feel like it was a gift from something, yeah, really, the interdisciplinary humanity gods. So yeah, that was just I felt really lucky for that, and it's leading to a great project right now. So.
With me, I'll say when I first started with my project, I really wanted to focus on the strategy that the Haitian American have developed in San Diego. And as I started really doing some deeper research, some people started opening to me and telling me their deeper stories. And I started getting really sentimental and feeling really touched about their story. And I started thinking, how could I say that their strategy, how they are developing to develop here, how to stay here, and the strategy they actually came up with to actually travel from South America all the way here. So it's like I attempts to be wanting to shift to tell the story more than understanding what's their element within the housing system that they live in, basically. And it's kind of hard for me to basically to tell both stories at the same time.
I mean, as a fellow humanist, I think that is such a really apt way of describing research, is to shift to telling a story, right? And how you're telling that story in a way that speaks most to your research investments and your personal investments. That's such a moving thing, Sean. Thank you for sharing that. And just a quick follow-up, I think some of you described it, but what was the most surprising? I think you described a bit about the evolution. Was there anything that was surprising? I think, Camille, you described realizing some almost personal and kind of political shifts for you, but was there anything else that you all want to share? Yeah, go for it.
I didn't know how much conflict there was within a discipline, and I think that that was a little scary, because I then had to I confronted myself needing to learn how to position, and then this was a very more sentimental project for me too, because again I'm working on this foreigner who's not a native French speaker, but has dedicated her entire life to writing in French, and that's something that I'm doing now, and I still plan to do. And but within discourse around post-colonialism and race, there are a lot of other stories and narratives that are almost they're not creating fiction, but there's a lot of other different types of subjectivities around that are also trying to be represented, and it makes you really think about the type of discourse within your discipline. So I felt a little bit intimidated, of course, by these I'm writing my paper, arguing and agreeing with these big scholars I don't even know, and I haven't so that was it feels really intimidating. So I was just really surprised, for sure, by how much more nuance there is to pushing towards the conversation, and I'm sure that's really prevalent for a lot of other disciplines.
I can also speak to that with the conflict in the claims I was making. I talked about oh well, clearly Henry VIII still had Catholic views. Apparently you can't say that. You can, but people argue about it all the time. So I didn't realize I was taking a side until I already had, and I was like, oh, this is a big argument that I just joined. Great. But yeah, certainly discovering that people have spent literal years arguing about the things I'm writing about. And yeah, so that was surprising. In addition, I was just shocked by how much religious context and then socioeconomic context there was, because you wouldn't think I'm writing about mainly rich white English people, so you wouldn't think it comes in, but it definitely does. So yeah, I was just surprised by how much I had to bring in for me to fully understand the manuscript.
We can move
Well,
I think you already described it, Camille, but if you wanted to, yeah.
I guess just to add on what I said earlier, like there were definitely moments where I was like, oh, like a lot of people don't know anything about their own bodies or the bodies of others. And I already knew that, but I think, yeah, I mean, I was like, I was like, oh my gosh, like people that are, and I think everyone knows this, like people making decisions about human bodies don't know about them. But then to see it on paper and to see people like have taken the time to write these words down and then to read those words and be like, you put this on paper, this is insane. Like to see it in person for my own eyes and like primary documents that I don't think are incorporated in media as much as they should be because they're inaccessible, they're hard to read, like for so many reasons, you know, that benefits the people writing them. But to like go through and be like, oh my gosh, you use this words from the like this particular word from like the 1800s to describe like the development of a pregnancy is just insane to me. Because it's one thing to be like, oh, I know that this person doesn't really have or doesn't have interests that benefit like the like helping women get dignity because like anyway, but it's just so sad to see like people like not understand something, write massive documents and then refer to like things that happened 100 years ago as justification. And it's just like mind-boggling. But yeah,
Thank you.
not super.
Yeah. Well, the other question. So, how has the structure of the fellowship helped or challenged your research? Our monthly meetings.
I'll say actually the monthly meetings the monthly meeting really helped me every time I came into the room and I was able to share actually what strategy I went to or what difficulty that I went through during the month. And as I say it out loud, and I can see Riley that exact or somebody else gets really sentimentally hearing my stories, and that gave me a real comfort to actually feel like, oh, actually, I'm actually doing the right thing, and actually, I'm feeling like I'm not alone. Someone else is actually here supporting me within my circle. Thank you.
Yeah, I think kind of to add on to that, really, it's just a great community, and I think pursuing a long project can be, it's not it's not always the most fun time. It's an amazing project. You learn so much, but it also is really challenging. This is something I've never done before, and I think it's the same for many others. And to just have that community to learn, I think it also challenged me to like, even from on a very like pragmatic level, learning how to manage your time and having deadlines, keeping track of those deadlines with research, because when it comes to a year-long project, it's really easy to find yourself in rabbit holes and to spend a lot of time on one thing that might not be relevant one time, but will be relevant the next. And it's nice to just have a schedule, and it's really, it kind of humanizes the approach to things, because sometimes it can be isolating, right, when you're just reading all day. And so I think it challenges you, but in a good way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. I mean, when we started, we had a year to do this project, and it seems like it's been a very, very quick year. So those monthly meetings definitely help to keep me on track, and definitely having the responses of everybody else when I was explaining where I'm at in my project was very helpful. And just to kind of see where everybody else was too, and everybody else's research processes really helped improve mine. I think helped me improve how I approach my research.
Mine also, I think, is about the structure. I am doing like my history thesis at the same time, and the way that's set up is more like it's more work on the spring semester. So the fall semester is very light, and I think that like having the Keck, like a lot of those meetings structured throughout the fall helped me encourage me to do like primary source research, or in the spring like apply to different conferences that I wouldn't really have been very incentivized to do by myself. But I was like, oh, this seems like I should do this. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked having like a group of people where it's like, okay, you use this resource, I'm gonna try and use the same thing. You use this program to organize your resource or references that's awesome. I'm also going to use that. And I think we had like really great discussions that helped kind of share where we were all at, and that helped me develop it, like, and also help present what I'm talking about. Yeah, and I think it was a great resource overall in terms of people and network and like community. Yeah, kept me on track, definitely.
I can definitely echo that. Like our monthly meetings, I would like look at my calendar the week before and be like, "Oh, I have a meeting next week. I have to have something to share at the meeting next week," which means I should probably write something different. So I'd be like, "Okay, so I have to talk about something. Let's add something. Let's see what else I can do." So definitely just like forcing me to keep working. Also, like I know a lot of us applied to grad school in the fall, and so like because that was like a hellish process for everyone, it was really nice. Like I know a lot of us used our Keck samples for that, so I feel like I had a lot of community, and like and otherwise would have been a very lonely time and very stressful. Of like, hey, can you read my personal statement? Like I'll read yours. Like let's talk about how much this sucks together. So that was really wonderful too. But also like one thing about the Keck is like I was able to like apply, like you said, to conferences that like I normally like would not have access to, just because like conferences cost a lot of money to go to. And so like I'm presenting my project like at a professional conference in May, and I would not have had that opportunity if I didn't have the Keck. So yeah, exciting things.
That's awesome. And I don't know, I'm not sure if you all, I think you right, noticed how many threads exist between all of your projects, right? I mean, as you're talking about Glissant too, really just, John, and you just so much of the feminist mystique that kind of goes throughout all of your projects. It's been really incredible to watch as somebody who's been learning from your projects as well, just how much of the conversations you all have been shaped by the conversations you've been having with each other too. So deeply appreciative of that. So our last question is, what do you consider to be the benefits of the fellowship? And you've talked a bit about it, but yeah, thinking back on the year and thinking about where you all will be next year, what are some of the benefits of the fellowship?
I think being a part of humanities, it feels really rewarding to kind of like not only just get recognition for that, but for having, you know, a fellowship to be paid for it. And I don't know, sometimes I think, I mean, humanities, we're in it's a little bit of a contentious time right now, right? Unfortunately, like, then a lot of attention goes to the business schools, right? It goes to even social sciences, and to just have a fellowship that is for humanities, because there's just so much research. There are so many people I meet even who, I talk to them about the fellowship, and they have like humanities ideas, but they're like in a different, you know, major. And I'm like, oh, it's so unfortunate because they had no idea that this, you know, humanities fellowship existed. So it's just, it makes me really happy to be a part of a community where like we're all doing really great work in, you know, in humanities, and you're getting paid for it, and you're getting recognized for it. It's just, it feels really nice. And then I also think like just to do with a long project in general, it's really exciting because you learn just so much about yourself. And you know, even I kind of view even writing a project, it's very like artistic experience too. You're learning to find your own voice, and you're also like, you get surprised by your own voice too. There are sometimes I read things and like it's almost as if a completely different person was writing it, you know, and then I go back to it and it feels just really surprising. And it's just I'm so happy to like, you know, have gone through the process. So if any of you in the audience are like thinking about applying, please apply to it. It's definitely the best thing that's happened this past year. So
yeah. I'll say, plus all the things you said already, and what I've said earlier about the community part, this is like, it feels like we all are on the same page, and we all are going down one path. And plus, the Humanities Center actually helped me through to actually follow my dreams, to be connected with my community, to help me get closer to my culture, and being able to get paid to get close to my culture. That's a plus. And with so much funding, actually, thank you for that. And I was able to actually help my interviewees that came over. I was able to give them water, to sit down and talk to me, and all of that. And that was really helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I guess what I have to say might have been said already, but I think the most important thing for me was the connection with the rest of the cohort. I think working together and like all going through the same thing at the same time, like you said, applying to grad school at the same time was really helpful for me to know that other people were going through the same process and having the same issues and stressors, and like we could all come together and talk about it together and work through it. Also, access to more access to research materials was very important for my project. Also, funding to go see the paintings I'm writing about in person was essential. I don't know if any of you have written about art before, but it's very different to see it on a computer screen than to see it in person. So like Juliana said, we went to SF MoMA and we saw one of the paintings I'm writing about, and I was probably standing there for like half an hour just looking at it. So that was great, and also like having other people to do that with was amazing. So.
Yeah, I think mine's really similar. In terms of like the grad school thing, I definitely that like 100%. I think mine was much more of like a like trying to figure out who I wanted to be like research wise. I think that was so much of this project. So I like the amount of time that we were given to like go down different rabbit holes in terms of research was really helpful. I think like in the process of applying, I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. Like this is not at all what I wanted to do when I like. But I think coming like now in April, like I have a much better sense, which I'm really grateful for. And then I think going to, again, like the primary sources were incredible. I think I have like all the PDFs of the like Nixon administration arguing about like a gymnastics event, and that's like the coolest thing ever to me. So I think that stuff like that is really exciting, and I have like an abundance of sources to do like future projects with, which is really exciting.
I completely agree. I think it's a great opportunity and incredible preparation for graduate school. Like I feel like this really helped narrow what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to study in graduate school, like specifically in terms of like a niche in psychology. Had I done English, it would have been metaphor theory easily. But in psychology, I was like, okay, I want to do projects with reproductive justice as like that main thread, and this helped define that. Also, to get paid for something that like resonates with you is just an incredible incentive. Yeah, I'm so grateful for the program. Books are also insanely expensive, so getting helped for those was so helpful. Was just so important to the research. But yeah, great opportunity.
I completely agree with like everything that everyone's already said. Like the community, especially while we were applying to grad school, and also just like not getting stuck in our works. But I think the thing that I found was most helpful was kind of like that preparation for grad school, but also like with public speaking. Like I really hate public speaking, and the Keck has forced me to do it so much. So like at first it was like I used it for my Keck for my senior English project, and like I had to talk for like 10 minutes, and I was like drenched in sweat, and I hated every single moment, but like I did it. And it's just forced me to get out of my comfort zone, especially with academic work, and like force myself to work on things that are going to be important skills in the future. Yeah.
You're very good at it, Abigail. So for what it's worth, yeah. Thank you all for sharing that. I want to take a little bit of time to maybe take questions from the audience, especially for those of you who are interested in applying for the fellowship. If you have any questions or any questions of our fellows who've done so much in the past year, please feel free to ask. That's okay too. That's absolutely fine. So oh yeah, go for it. Go.
So I'm not an undergrad, but I have out of like utter curiosity, I'm finishing grad school at the Kroc School. I'm doing the Peace and Justice program. So I'm curious what grad school programs each of you are applying for. If nobody has more important questions.
Yes, I've applied for getting my master in architecture. So far I'm looking at UCLA and I'm looking at CCA. So getting my master's will actually help me get my professional license so I could be professionally practiced.
Yeah, this is actually really recent news too. I just confirmed to go to UC Berkeley next year for the MA PhD program in French studies, and and Keck really helped. I mean, I use my Sure sample for a lot of the writing samples. For the samples, but then again, even doing the Keck process, when I would visit schools and people would ask me about when I'm interested, I could just use the quick elevator pitch we would do for our Keck project and just vomit that, and and because people would share that. Yes, of course. I think it is intimidating, but then you're kind of getting into that new grad school space, which is really nothing what I really expected. So it was nice to have the Keck to feel like, okay, I have things to say and things to share. So yeah.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. I also used my project for my writing sample, so it was very helpful. But I will be getting my master's in art history at the Institute of Fine Arts at NYU.
Oh, amazing.
And yeah, same. I also use my writing sample Keck for my writing sample, and I'm gonna go to Georgetown for their master's in global, international, and comparative history.
I just accepted an offer to SDSU to get my master's in psychology, where I'm going to be doing research in fetal alcohol spectrum disorder.
My sample for grad school applications. I feel like that was like a lot of our ulterior motives. But I accepted an offer to get my English PhD at the University of Minnesota. Yeah.
Congratulations to all of you. It's so impressive. I mean, I'm not just, I think you all think I'm just saying this, but I've been impressed by you all since day one. And it's just been the consistent and constant work that you all have been doing, and how your work's developed, just how you're thinking about how you want to pursue your work in the future. It's just been really incredible. And I'm in such awe of the things that you all are doing and what you'll continue to do. So congratulations there. But so that's our program, and we're going to stick around to maybe answer some questions, especially for those of you who are really interested in applying for the program. I'm also happy to answer questions, but our fellows are some of the best people to ask for questions about that year. So we'll go ahead and end it here with congratulations to the fellows for everything they've accomplished, as well as to all of you thank you for attending. And we actually have upcoming, they will be presenting their projects actually in a couple of weeks, so we're really excited to share that with you all as well. Please look out for the flyer around that.
Can I just say, really, I know before, and I just have to also give a really big thanks to, Dr. Diaz and Lindsay, and really just, I mean, like, none of this could have really ever happened, right, without both of you, just the team, right, the Keck team, and also just, professors in general. I think, people who, like, are invested in humanities research, that, none of us can do it alone, and it's so great to have role models to look up to, and people who are also keeping the humanities alive. It really is inspiring, and I think it also just speaks again how impressive this group is. We're also like thinking about the people who've inspired us too. So yeah, thank you so much to both of you for also, supporting us throughout this. Thank you.